Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to this webinar on increasing your ability to focus. Today, I'm going to be providing you with a bunch of different tools in order to help you to develop your ability to focus. For all those who registered for the webinar, I will also be sending you the guide to creating more focus as well. So you can look for that. So I'm curious to know why you are here today and what you're hoping to achieve. My intent as a coach is to provide you with all of the tools that you need to help you to apply the concepts to your life. So making the conceptual practical and useful for you. So I will be providing lots of different tools in this webinar today. And I also will be putting those into the guide and sending those out if you want some more information or if you want some reference material. So look for that. Today, we're going to be talking about increasing the ability to focus. Just quickly, I'll introduce myself. My name is Kim Christensen, and I am a peaceful productivity coach. I help high achievers create more time and feel better in the process. So I work one-on-one with my clients. I help them to learn how to manage their attention and pay attention to those things that are most important to them. And we also work on listening to our inner guidance system. Some people call that their inner wisdom or their intuition. And in order to do that, we learn how to embrace our emotions as communication in this guidance system. Today, specifically, I'm going to be talking about increasing our ability to focus through mindfulness practices by paying attention to what's going on for us in the present moment, what's going on right now. And I'm really excited to share this with you because this is probably the most important productivity tool that I can offer, is just simply paying attention to what's going on with your thoughts, your feelings, and your unconscious decisions in any given moment. So let's dive right in. As I mentioned earlier, you're welcome to put any comments or questions into the chat box. I will be keeping an eye on that. So when we talk about our ability to focus, what we're talking about, it's really directly related to our ability to stay present in the moment. Oftentimes, the present moment can be unpleasant. Maybe it's boring, or maybe it's lonely or annoying, frustration. There's a lot of different emotions that we can find in the present moment, and not all of them are pleasant or comfortable. And when I think about mindfulness historically, I have this image that pops into my head of meditation and calm, peaceful, pleasant, kind of like serenity. That's the first image that pops into my head, like a Buddhist monk and just really in tune with what's going on in the present moment and what's going on in my body. But we know that any of us who have tried meditation, we know that staying present isn't always comfortable. In fact, it's often uncomfortable. It can be boring, as I mentioned earlier, frustrating. Sometimes it feels like a lot of work, like it takes effort to stay tuned into what's going on around us and tuned into our thoughts and emotional state. However, I offer this because this is really the secret to increasing our ability to focus. It's the ability to stay present in the moment, no matter what that offers us. It's the ability to stay in the moment, even when it's not particularly comfortable or even interesting. The problem that we often stumble across, most often this problem is unconscious. The problem is that we unconsciously believe that boredom or any other uncomfortable emotion, for that matter, is a problem that needs to be solved. It's a problem that we need to solve with action. We need to do something. If we're bored, we need to make ourselves busy. If we're frustrated, we need to move on and do something else, distract ourselves from the frustration. We often tell ourselves that I don't want to, or I shouldn't be feeling this way. And if I am feeling this way, it's a problem that needs to be solved. So more often than not, we're not even aware that we're telling ourselves this. And so we're not even aware that we're telling ourselves this. So we don't even realize that we see it as a problem and that we're taking action to solve for it. But underneath the surface, it's definitely guiding our behavior, and it's creating this tendency to distract ourselves from that present moment. So the question that I often like to ask myself is, what if boredom were not a problem? What if boredom was not a problem that needed to be solved? What if it was okay to be bored? And better yet, what if there was value to be found in boredom? Chris Bailey does a really fascinating talk on this subject, on the value of boredom. And I'll encourage you to check it out if you're interested. But what he offers in this TED Talk is that there is a lot of value, there's a lot of gold to be found in the river of boredom. And we don't even realize it because we're so busy distracting ourselves away from being bored that we've lost sight of what the value of boredom really is. And in fact, he says that our tendency to not want to be bored, this constant need for stimulation, is actually the enemy of focus. Overstimulation is the enemy of focus. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that, I'll encourage you to check out his TED Talk. It is great. So when we talk about mindfulness, what are some of the techniques that we can practice, that we can take away and apply to our own lives? So mindfulness, in my experience, is just really paying attention to ourselves, to be mindful of what our experience is like in the moment. It's revealing our thoughts, our emotions, and our unconscious decisions to ourselves. So paying attention to what we're thinking in any given moment, becoming a compassionate observer to our thoughts, rather than letting them sort of call the shots behind the scenes below our level of conscious awareness. Emotional awareness, so understanding and acknowledging what our experience is like in the moment, and also paying attention to how that is driving our decisions and our behaviors, which is the last piece around making decisions consciously with an awareness of what we're thinking and feeling in a moment, rather than pushing those things down aside and making unconscious decisions, just habitually following the same path that we've always followed and not even really conscious of what's going on below the surface. So I'll illustrate this with an example. So when this is all happening below my level of conscious awareness, what might happen in a given moment as I'm working is I might have the thought, this is boring, or I should check my phone. I'm worried that I've missed something, or I just want to take a break and do something interesting for a moment. Again, those are all barely conscious to us if we're not in the habit of paying attention to them. And what often happens when we have this thought, I should check my phone, is we don't even think twice about it. We make the decision to pick up the phone and look at it. So there's an unconscious decision there. And then when we're actually looking at the phone, we feel the relief from the boredom, or we feel the dopamine hit, the stimulation of having something pique our interest. So there's a lot going on below the surface there in that simple action in terms of just picking up your phone. There's thoughts, emotions, and unconscious decisions that are all playing a role there. What would this look like if we were conscious to all of that? So what it might look like is we still have the thought, I should check my phone. But rather than unconsciously just reaching for the phone, we might check in and think, oh, my brain is offering me a suggestion, a thought. I am feeling bored in this moment. I am feeling worried in this moment. And then making a conscious decision. Do I want to check my phone in this moment? Or maybe I want to wait till I'm done to check my phone. Or maybe I will just keep going for another 10 minutes and then check my phone afterwards. So all of that is happening at the level of conscious awareness. I know that these are just thoughts that are being offered to me. I have an idea of what's going on for my emotional state and how that's driving my decisions, and I'm making conscious decisions. So that's what it would look like in practice. So those 3 steps that you might have heard me say in the previous slide were noticing what's going on with compassion. And I'll just quick side note there in terms of the compassion piece. Compassion is super important when we start noticing these things, because what will often trip us up or derail us at the noticing stage is we might find ourselves having some judgment around what's going on, especially if we're not in the habit of paying attention. We might be thinking to ourselves, oh, I'm distracting myself more than I thought I was. I should be paying attention right now. I should be more self-disciplined. I should be more productive. Those should thoughts start popping up as soon as we start noticing. We call this the river of misery. When we start to understand what's happening below the surface, we might be tempted to judge ourselves for that. And so compassion can help us to move through that instead of get blocked and stuck in it. The second step is planning in advance. And I will unpack each one of these in more detail for you. But planning in advance is really your opportunity to experiment with your calendar. So I like to block off time in my calendar, time for deliberate focus time, time for doing nothing, for being bored, to experiment with what it is that I want to achieve and when I want to actually improve my relationship with boredom. So this is your opportunity to make some decisions in advance and experiment with different things that might work well for you. And then the last one is retraining the brain. The beautiful part about the brain and what we now know about neuroplasticity is that if we have a habit of distracting ourselves and not being mindful, we can also change that habit and we can do things that will help us to pay more attention. So there are a lot of things that we can do to actually improve our ability to focus, to retrain the brain. So I'm going to go into those things in a little bit more detail now. So the first one was around noticing. And I mentioned earlier that when we are starting out this journey, it's really important to stay curious and have compassion for ourselves. The best way that I know to start paying attention and noticing your thoughts and emotions is to disrupt your routine somehow. So two things that I like to do to disrupt my routine are to set some limits around my phone time. So if you want to set aside some time in your calendar to turn off the phone, whether that's your evening routine or an extended period of time on the weekend, whatever that looks like, put your phone aside consciously for a period of time and notice what comes up for you during that time. That's really going to offer you an opportunity to see what's happening behind the scenes a little bit, because you'll start to notice that there are thoughts that are like, I should check my phone right now. And then not having your phone available will help you to realize that you just had that thought. It's interrupting that habitual have the thought, grab the phone. It's interrupting that cycle a little bit, and it will help you to shine a light on what those thoughts are and the underlying feelings as well. Why am I having this urge to check my phone right now? Is it because I'm bored? Is it because I'm seeking stimulation of some sort? Is it whatever that might be? So that's the first one, is disrupt your routine in order to notice what you're thinking, feeling, and deciding in the present moment. The next one is planning in advance. And I mentioned earlier that this is your opportunity to experiment with different things. And I'll offer you 3 different techniques or tools that you can experiment with. So the first one is focus time. In your calendar, set aside a block of time just for those tasks that are a little bit more complex or require some more attention to detail, where you don't want to be interrupted. You just want a block of time to simply focus on one thing. For me, what that looks like is a 2-hour block of time in the morning. I like to schedule it when I'm most alert, my alert time. So for me, that's in the morning. I'm a morning person. And so once I've had my coffee, that's when the synapses are firing at a rapid rate. And so I set aside 2 hours of time during that time. That also gives me the ability to protect that time from things like client meetings or errands or other types of tasks that require less attention, responding to emails, that type of thing. I've really protected some space in my calendar and given me the opportunity to just really focus on one thing. And I do that by deciding in advance what that block of time will be. The second thing that I like to do after focus time is have a definition of done, a DOD. And what that looks like is, rather than telling myself that I'm going to work on this report for an hour, I give myself a defined result. So I will email this result to so-and-so at the end of 1 hour. Having a real tangible, concrete outcome that I'm working towards will help me to stay more focused during that time period rather than when I'm just working on something, I'm more likely to be grabbing at everything that comes my way during that hour. Oh, I should research this fact, or I should look into this more, that kind of thing. If I'm really specifically targeted on creating a single outcome, I'm more likely to focus and keep that on my radar. So that's called the definition of done. The third thing is to introduce some nothing time into your calendar. Some time when your no outcome is required, that you can just let your mind wander, sit and look out the window, or maybe play. As adults, we often forget about the value of play, of just doing something just for the sheer enjoyment of doing it rather than to produce an outcome. When we're solely focused on producing, and it tends to put a little bit of pressure on ourselves, and we get really sort of hyper focused on producing all the time, operating under pressure, everything becomes very serious, and it can be quite fatiguing at the end of the day. Whereas when we set aside some time just to do nothing, it improves our relationship with boredom and it allows our minds to just wander. And then the third step in increasing our ability to focus is around retraining the brain. And I have 3 tools that you might want to try here. So the first one is the Pomodoro technique. And the Pomodoro technique is really helpful when we think about our ability to focus like a muscle. The Pomodoro technique is like doing reps with our focus muscle. And so what it is it is a predefined length of time where we do nothing but focus intensely on a task. So maybe it's 10 minutes or even 5 minutes to start with. And then we give ourselves a bit of a break. So the focus is the contraction and the break is the extension. So, and then doing that in a series of reps will help us to strengthen the focus for that length of time, for that 5 minutes. We are increasing our ability to stay focused. And then as we train our brains to focus, we can lengthen the duration. So we can increase that amount of time from 5 minutes to 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, up to an hour or whatever you want to do. Followed by a break gives us the ability to contract the muscle and then relax, contract and relax. And for those of you who have done strength training, you know that there's growth just as much in the contraction as there is in the relaxation. So it's really important to follow those durations, those time periods of focus with a short break. And that's called the Pomodoro technique. The next one is around embracing discomfort. So if you discover after you've been paying attention to your thoughts, your emotional state, and your unconscious decisions, if you discover that your behaviors are being, your self-distraction is being driven by an avoidance of discomfort or seeking out stimulation, what you can do is you can increase your ability to stay present with discomfort. And there's a couple of ways that you can do that. My favorite is exercise. When I exercise without a podcast, without music, when I'm fully present in the exercise and paying attention to what's going on in my body, it may be uncomfortable if I'm really exerting myself. it actually might be kind of fun. There's some adrenaline there, some endorphins that are released. But just paying attention to what that all feels like rather than tuning out of that moment with music, with a podcast, with conversation, whatever that looks like. We often distract ourselves. Even though we're exercising, we're not really present with the exercise. So that's my favorite way of embracing discomfort and paying attention to it. Two other ways: you could experiment with meditation. Meditation is a great way to understand what's going on in your brain, not with the intent of eliminating all of the thoughts that are happening. Sometimes we think that meditation is about having no thoughts at all. Meditation is more about noticing the thoughts and not becoming emotionally attached to them, not becoming sucked in by them. Instead, just noticing them and releasing them. And the third one that's helpful in terms of embracing discomfort is the hunger scale. So often, those of us who live in our heads, we, when asked how we're feeling, even if we're hungry, we'll go to our brain for the answer to that rather than to our body or to our emotional state, our sensations. We'll go to our brains. So someone will ask, "Oh, how are you feeling today?" "Fine." It's coming from our brain. It's just a habitual response. Or, "Are you hungry?" And we'll go to our brains and we'll say, "Well, I just ate breakfast 2 hours ago. I shouldn't be hungry. Am I hungry? I don't know. Like, I don't normally eat at this time." All of that is like answering the question of hunger with our brains instead of with our body, actually tuning in. Okay, what is the sensation that I'm feeling related to hunger? Is my stomach growling? Am I feeling like I need to eat right now? So those are the three opportunities to embrace discomfort: exercise, meditation, and the hunger scale. Just understanding where you're at on the hunger scale, whether you're hungry or full. And then last but not least is practicing the ability to tune in to the present moment and tune out. So tune in can look like active listening, as an example. Dropping all of your agenda when you're listening to something and simply noticing what's happening with the other person and with yourself in that moment while you're listening. Not preparing a response in advance, but just simply tuning into the moment. Preparing a response is more about going to the future. Well, this is what I'm going to say. This is how I'm going to respond when that person is finished talking. And then tuning out is different than checking out. Checking out looks like mindless eating or mindless scrolling, mindless TV watching. It's mindless. Versus consciously tuning out is deliberately choosing play or deliberately choosing boredom, deliberately choosing to stay present, deliberately choosing meditation, as an example. All of those are tuning in and tuning out at will. And when you practice doing those things, it's like the Pomodoro technique. It's like a muscle. It's giving you the ability to go in and go out, contract and release. Okay, I've given you a ton of information in this webinar. Hopefully there are some things there that you can take away and experiment with. If you are interested in working with me one-on-one to increase your ability to focus on what's really important to you, I'll invite you to check out my website, financialwellnesscoach.ca, and check out the options for private coaching there. In our private coaching sessions, what we'll do is many of the things that I just described to you in this webinar. We will bring forward those unconscious thoughts that you might not have even been aware of. We'll look at them together in a space of curiosity and compassion. We'll drop the judgment around them. We'll understand what those thoughts are creating for us in terms of emotions and behaviors and decisions. And then from that space, you can really make conscious decisions. You can decide, is this something that I continue to want to do? And if not, then I will plan accordingly. Or maybe it is something that I want to do and I will strengthen my ability to really focus on it. And most importantly, I think these coaching sessions will help to make decisions consciously and help you to respond in the moment rather than react in the moment. So responding is being conscious, making a conscious decision intentionally, whereas reacting is unconsciously making a decision following those habitual thoughts and emotions, that same old pattern. Ultimately, what private coaching can help you to do is move from stuck to movement, progress that you can recognize and really appreciate. Okay, I'm going to stay online for a couple of minutes here in case there's any questions. Feel free to pop those into the chat box. And also, I will be sending out the guide to all of the registrants, and you're welcome to send me any questions at any time. And also, if there are no questions or while we're waiting for questions, I'll tell you about a special opportunity that I have just for registrants at this webinar. I'm running a free beta program right now, and I'm calling it Take Back Control of Your Schedule. It's a 12-week one-on-one coaching program. It's completely free, and it includes all of the tools that we talked about today, as well as the coaching to reveal and create self-awareness and insights around your thought patterns, your emotional patterns, and your habits. So if that's something that you're interested in participating in, send me an email, kim@financialwellnesscoach.ca. And in exchange for your feedback, you'll receive all of the coaching and all of the materials that are offered in this beta program. Okay, thank you so much for coming today. Really appreciate your support. And please send me any questions, comments, observations. It really helps me to make my presentations more targeted and helpful to the viewers. So I welcome that opportunity. Thanks, everyone. And I hope you have an amazing day.